Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Mikey Wine here, aka Gundamonium Works, and we are live. Yes, this is part 6, right? Yeah, part 6. Creating an anime paint scheme for this the Queadluun Rau and the Max Batteroid diorama, which I'm trying to put together. Right now, we're just working mostly, in fact, all on just the Queadluun Rau, and it's a very time consuming process, more time consuming than I originally thought it would be. It's just because it's all hand drawn, it's all done by hand. And I'm using these Posca paint pens. They're working out pretty good so far. Still not I think the jury's out on whether or not, once I clear coat everything. I've noticed as I'm doing this, handling the pieces, sometimes I get little chips and some of the paint comes off. So I'm hoping that once I seal everything, it'll be fine. Anyway, let's get started here. So open the show. Welcome in, guys. And right off the bat, we've got Angel, we got Nick and Tyler in the room. How's it going, guys? Good to see you. Let's get down to the bench here. I'm going to show off exactly what we've done, what I've done so far. And it's maybe about 3/4 of the way done here. So let's go down just to down look here, and we'll start here. These are pretty much all the pens I've been using, with the exception of the light blue. I'm really not using that. Just that was left over from working on this guy. But anyway, I guess I could toss that down out of the way. So yeah, white, black, blue, dark blue, gray, and some pinks here. I'm really not using these at all. I'm just using mostly the light pink, because even after I did this side piece, the leg side pieces here, I originally added some darker pink, trying to make like a double kind of shadow, and it really just didn't look. I didn't like it. I kept going over, making it smaller and smaller, using the lighter pink, and eventually just completely got rid of it altogether. I may end up sanding that down and redoing it, but I don't know. So we'll see. I think it looks pretty good right now. We'll see what happens. I'll try to seal it and see if it looks really crappy. Then maybe I'll go back and redo it. So I'm going to go down to the close-up here. A lot of the majority of the time here has been on the body, and I'm really kind of liking the way this looks. One thing I was talking to Tyler earlier today about is, you might actually be able to see it, there's like a little bit of a defining line right here. I've noticed that when using these pens, if I fill in an area and then I decide to go back and fill in another area, I get kind of a line. And I'm hoping that once I clean all this up and clear coated, it won't be as noticeable. Again, at least this is on the back skirt, kind of under the back skirt. It's not going to be really that noticeable, but I do like the way this is looking so far. I got the shoulders on here. I've had to touch these up a little bit. Like I said, handling these pieces while I'm doing this, a lot of times I've got to be careful about letting stuff dry, but then just going back and picking it up and moving around, doing another section. I end up chipping off a little piece here and there. And it's not big pieces. It's just like little tiny bits that come off, but little blemishes that need to be touched up. Looking at the back here, this is the rear thrusters. I'm using that gray as my lighter color, and using the color that I airbrushed on as my initial shadow color. So that's what you're seeing here. And then I added some white for additional gloss effect on there. But I do like the way this really came together really nicely. So I'm almost finished with this. I've started on one of the legs. I've got one of the arms kind of done. I've been doing a few pieces at a time here. This will be the right leg. And this is most of the shadowing on the inside of it. And then I've also got one of the feet done here, which we'll look at in just a second. So yeah, this is I think pretty much done except for decals. I've got some markings that I need to put on, and that'll finish off the whole piece. And then I've got this is actually the inside. Let's see, this has got to go. I'm looking at this upside down here. So this will go in this direction here. I'm not going to press it fully on there because I want to make sure I can get it back off because I got to do any touch-up work. But that's the inside. I will be probably tonight. I'll be working on the outside, which is one of those that's made to open as well. So there'll be a separation line in the middle there. But what's up, Ken? What up? How you doing? Hey, George. Welcome in, my friend. So we're just looking at the leg here, and I was talking about some of that chipping, some of the coming off here. Might be able to see that as I just rub this a little bit, you can see like a little bit of that red showing through. So I'm discovering that, the paint is fairly durable, although I am painting this on a flat coated lacquer, and I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it, but sometimes this stuff does come up. I've noticed it with the black in particular. It seems like I'll get little chips here and there that I need to touch up. But what I'll do is before I go and clear coat everything, I'm going to go in. I'll touch up all these pieces, make sure they're in great shape before I do that, and then I'll clear coat them and seal everything in, and hopefully that will take care of that. I'm just going to touch this up real quick here. In the last week, I also got some more pens with different sizes, some of the smaller sizes, to make this detail work a little bit easier to do. Because when I first started using these, I was using the 5mm tips, and it was really hard to get some of these thinner lines with those big fat 5mm tips. So I bought some 3mm, and then I also went down and bought some 1mm as well, and those seem to be working out pretty good. So for those that just joined in, here's the back. I really like the way this looks, especially with the white. Just a little added touch of like glare, adding a little bit of that sheen to those lighter colors. I'm not going to be doing that with the red or the blue, because those are mostly shadows. And then the front here, I think it looks pretty good. I have actually gone through and touched this up several times because I just wasn't too happy with the way that the whole center of the head section started to turn out. I wasn't sure where my shadows were going to be, so I was kind of messing around with it, and I kept adding a little more blue, but I'm pretty sure that's where I'm going to leave it for now. If I do have to repaint it, at least it's just this one piece that I can remove and do that, and I can start over. But I will have to touch up a little bit of that blue on this torso, because like I said, as I'm handling it, I'm just noticing a little bit of that here and there, little bits of color come off. So I'm going to put this back on a skewer. Looks brilliant. Thank you, George. I'm really liking the way it looks. It is kind of time consuming and challenging nonetheless. I'm going to get this propped up here so it doesn't fall over. It's a pretty heavy piece, and the torso is pretty heavy, so I got to put it on a skewer in a way that won't fall over. Here's the 1 foot that I have finished, and I went ahead and outlined it as well. And that's another thing I got to do on some of these other parts, is I got to outline them, because if you look at any of these anime paint schemes, every hard edge is outlined. So that's what I'm trying to do with what you're seeing here with these, basically tracing the outer edges of all these pieces to give it that anime look. So this is the inside of the foot. This is going to go on the right leg, and the angle of that would be lighter on this side, darker over here. So that's where the shadows come in. I may, in fact, because I've been using that white, I might go back over this and add some some glare streaks like I did with the back and do that as well. But for now, I'm just using the gray to kind of highlight those high spots and the spots that would be more exposed to light, and trying to keep that light direction fairly uniform. So what do we do next? I think I'll start with the other foot, I suppose. And this one has not been touched. It's just straight up blue. One of the things I did notice with this kit, now this foot has not been modified. The other one I had to cut a notch out. If you look at the back, like the bottom of this foot, you see the notch that I had to cut out of basically right in here. And that was so I could reassemble it. And what happened was, the way they designed this foot in the ball joint here is when I was trying to pose this originally, I set it down on the desk, and I was trying to basically put pressure on it to get the foot to move the way I wanted to. But this ball joint is basically mounted to the heel section. So if you try to twist the front of the foot, it'll snap it right off. And that's what happened. I actually broke the entire front of the foot right off. So in order for me to reassemble it, I had to notch out that bottom so I could get this to go back in, because this kind of fits on a peg. There's a peg that goes straight down. You can actually see it right here. That peg goes straight down into that bottom, or into the back foot half. And in order for me to get that back in and up in there, I had to actually notch out the bottom of the foot. But like I said, I'm not going to be seeing the bottom of the foot much, so I wasn't too worried about the way that looked. I just had to kind of carefully shave that out and give me enough room to get in there and reinstall it once I glued everything back together and actually reinforced that ankle so I wouldn't do that again. So, but that was definitely a lesson learned as far as that's concerned. So, let's see. These are my 3 gray pins. I got 5, 3, and 1 mil. 1 mils I'm using. It's more of a sharper tip. These are good for doing obviously really thin lines. You can fill in some small areas with it, but it's nice to have. I notice that most of my work I've been doing is with the 3, unless I'm going to fill in a large area. Then I go ahead and switch to the 5. So what we're going to do is, because this is going to be the left foot, so the angle of this is going to be more light on this side and a little bit more shadow here. So I'm going to use the other side just as a reference. I'll take this off my skewer so I can kind of set these down and see, like, again, most of the light's on this side. This one's going to be angled this way, so most of the light coming down will be on this side. And some of these areas are under shadow, like the back of the heel, excuse me, and the top of the foot there is actually tucked in. If you look at the way this mounts, I'm just going to pop this on very briefly here. Okay, so now looking at the top of that, you can see how some of that is under. It's under the front of the foot, so that's why I made that back area more of a shadow there. So it kind of holds true to my direction of light. I don't want to fully press that on, so a little bit harder to get off when you're doing that. So pull the pieces back apart. I'm going to have to disassemble this a little bit when I go to clear coat everything. With the head in particular, I'm going to leave the back probably mounted to because the front and the back sections come together of the torso. I'll probably leave those connected. I'm just going to probably take the head portion off in the middle, and that way I can spray that separate. But for the time being, I'm just doing it all because I want to make sure my shadow lines, especially if they cross over a separate panel, I want to make sure that those lines match like this. Like, for example, let's look at the shoulders. You see how this shadow comes across and continues on to that shoulder piece, and same with the other side. Now this will rotate, but this is the position I'm going to be keeping everything in. So those lines match up. And that's what I'm talking about when I say like making sure those intersecting lines line up if two pieces have to come together. So all right, let's do some drawing. So I'm going to kind of use the same pattern here, a little bit. I mean, because this is freehand, nothing's going to match entirely. But I've got my little. This is the instruction booklet. I've been just using this as a test bed, in case I need to prime these tips again. Sometimes they do get a little dry if you leave the caps off for very long lengths of time. They will tend to do that. All right, so all my light is going to be on this side for the most part. So yeah, make sure I get this right. Okay. Yep. Oops. Don't want to do this. Don't want to screw this up. Okay. So this is all shadow over here. So for now, I'm going to just go down in front of this. And this is all going to be filled in. So I'm just going to draw my initial lines. And then I'll go back, of course, with black and trace everything out. So this is going to come down. Because again, this is the majority of my light is over here. All right. Yeah, just like that. So this I'm going to go ahead and fill in. I'm going to take my 5mm out and just fill this in. I can add more little details later, and I'll show what I'm talking about. Right now, I'm just basically flooding this with color, and then I'll go in and make those little some of those little glare lines. Talking earlier about these pens leaving like a defining line if you go in and fill in another section. So knowing that, having learned that through this process, I'm trying to make sure that when I go to fill a section like I'm doing now, I'm using long, even strokes to kind of try to fill that in without there being anything left to fill in later, because I don't want that separation to show up. This gray, though, has been a little bit thinner than some of the other colors I've been using. So it's a good thing, too, to continuously kind of shake these pens to get them to, make sure the paint is nice and mixed up before you try to apply it. Because obviously when you get down to it, you don't want the color from underneath showing through. And I did notice that a little bit on this gray in particular. So happy hump day, everybody. How's it going? What do they call it? Friday junior, Thursday junior, whatever. All right, so now you can kind of see how initially that starts. And what I did over here is I kind of, with this other foot, is I kind of have a little bit of a separating, like a glare line coming down. I'm going to do the same, something similar over here. I'm just going to wait for this to dry. I did saturate this tip quite a bit on this pen because I know that this gray is a little bit thinner. I want to make sure that it really covers well, so I'm using quite a bit more. I'm just going to go and do the heel here, kind of outline. And I can do that with this one pen. Just try not to, I don't want this to slip out of my fingers. Because when this stuff is not dry yet, it will, fingerprints are very easily embedded in this stuff. So for what I'm going to do is make sure this dries first. I'm going to turn my fan on here just to get a little air circulation. Hump day is right. Just going to let this dry, and I'll go back and add the additional shadows or for light. But for the time being, I might I'm going to pop this side piece back off and then grab, let's see, other side. This is the outer one, which will go on like so. Okay, so because this is mostly under light, I'm going to do a little bit of shadowing, but I didn't press this piece fully on. You can see the gap there. You can see the pegs. I'm just using that because I want to be able to draw with the pen without transferring any color onto this black ring. I want to make sure that stays black. I mean, even if it did get a little bit on, I could go back over it in black, but that's actually airbrushed paint. So if I can minimize the amount of touch-ups I got to do, it'll really help. So there's not going to be a lot of shadow here because this is mostly exposed, but I will do a little bit around the outside. And this is all, this is all kind of random. There's no real design to it. I'm just kind of picturing it in my head, and then I go in and just start drawing. It's a little bit nerve-wracking at times because you don't want to go too overboard. You don't want it too little. You want it to look right. So just going to kind of visualize where I want to start here, and I think I'm just going to go from here. You can always, increase the size of whatever field that you're filling in. But I'm going to go fairly small for at the moment. I want to make sure these intersecting lines, because there will be a black piece across the front here, but this shadow I want to make sure is filled in. So now I'm going to use my 5mm to fill this in. It's just quicker, and then there's also a lot more paint. And then, with that being said, you have to also make sure you're not going too much. I'm just pressing down on the tips of these because the tip kind of collapses and goes in, and then it actually releases the paint and actually saturates the tip. So I want a decent amount of paint on this, so it fills rather quickly, but also it's not as opaque. I want to make sure the color underneath isn't really coming through much. Okay, kind of like that. It's just a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of a crescent, kind of moon shape to that. If I need to go another coat, I'll let that sit for a second. You said last week you studied art. Can you elaborate? I never really studied art. I did art in high school. I did anime. I was pretty much self-taught animation. I especially Macross stuff. That's where I really got my passion. as younger teenager. I just basically copied that style of like Japanese animation, particularly the Macross stuff. And but I did take art classes. I mean, I was in high school. I was not very responsible as a kid, or I was actually just lazy. And there was a project that, it's one of those things you regret at the time. I can't say much about it now because I'm in my 50s, but when I was in high school, I had to complete a project in a certain time, and I didn't know it, that had I just done my work instead of being lazy about it, I had a scholarship waiting for me. But true to form, most of my childhood was a struggle because, and looking back now, I was probably undiagnosed ADHD, for all I know. I seemed to do well on tests, but I never, I didn't do the work, And art was one of the passions. I mean, I did more there than I did in other places. Like I also made jewelry. I did other things like that. But who knows where I had been had I actually completed that one project and got that scholarship. So, but most of the stuff that I learned was either from high school or self-taught doing animation style stuff. So I'm going to let the heel dry now. I just did that. So as far as to answer your question, like studying art, I never studied much other than high school, really. That was it. Whatever projects, this isn't quite dry yet. I'm going to wait a minute. Whatever projects they had there in school, whatever we had to do, I was always pretty good at. But I did teach my daughter how to do that. I would sit there and just draw eyes, like those anime style eyes. I would just sit there. I had pages and pages of that stuff where I would just draw one thing over and over again. And I taught her how to do the same thing. And then she just ran with it. I was kind of amazed at how much she picked up and developed on her own. So this is, the heel's drying now. The front of the foot is pretty much almost dry except for this little crease where a lot of that paint kind of settled. And then I'll do my little added glare over here on the other side to kind of match the one foot. But so that's pretty much it. I was talking about my models when I used to build. This was back when Revell came out with the Robotech changers. That was my first exposure to a Macross model kit, which ultimately turned out to be Macross. But at the time, I didn't know it was Macross. I just thought, oh, this is cool. It's Robotech, whatever. And I would just, when I built a model, I would pose it and then sit there and just draw it. I still have all of my drawings back from the 80s, back from high school and everything. No worries, George. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, no problem. I still have all of my art portfolio in the house here. That's a lot of my original drawings from the 80s and when I was in school. Some of the stuff shortly after that. In fact, a buddy of mine was also a very good cartoonist, and that was one of the things I wanted to do. And it never did. But when you're in high school and you're like, oh yeah, this is where I want to go. But he was a brilliant cartoonist, and we were going to develop our own animation, our own anime, and it was called, what was it called? I know I've got it written down, or it's on one of my pages. It was Pack Rat's Brigade, and there was one guy was Pack Rat, and he was a rat, of course. And then you had Lurch, who was a vulture. There was Kit Kat. There was all these characters that we'd come up with. And I started doing most of the drawing for it after high school, but it was right about that time where we were just getting close to graduation, and we're like, what are we going to do with this? And then he went into the Navy, and I never saw the guy again. So, such is life, right? Certain things you aspire to do, but they just don't evolve. And again, I didn't have the proper. I was pretty lazy. I just say I was pretty lazy. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do with this other foot here is kind of what I did here. As you can see that little additional glare line. I'm going to add a little bit of that here and just kind of branch off from the side of this and continue on down to the bottom of the foot. And this will kind of further just add a little bit of that detail to it. It doesn't have to match exactly the other side. And I'm going to go and add that black around the border. All of the edges are going to be. I'm shaking these off to the side here because I did have the other day. Fortunately, I didn't get on anything, but I was shaking one of these rather hard to try to get it mixed up, and I didn't realize that it was going to fling some of this paint out. Unfortunately, I didn't get on any of the pieces, but it certainly scared the crap out of me for a second. So, you see how time-consuming this can be. So what I'm going to do while I'm waiting for that, actually, I think I got it. It's dry enough. I'm going to add another layer here. So I notice this pink is pretty kind of opaque and a little bit see-through. So I just want to go over it again just to kind of give it a second layer. Now that it's dry, now this will finish that off nicely. I think the only reason why I might repaint that other one is because I've gone over it several times, so it's the paint's getting a little bit heavy on it. I'm going to put both sides on here just so we can kind of get an idea. All right, so inside, outside. This is outside. Oops, I got a little bit of that pink on my finger. Where did I touch it? Oh, I must have just got it with a pen or something. Thankfully. So if we look at the front, that's outside, that's inside. Just a little bit of that shadow. Can almost completely, cover that one, but there will be a little bit of light reflecting off of that piece, even though it's mostly in shadow. And I'm going to have to go back and touch up the black again. It's just, for some reason, it's flaking off in certain places. So it's a learning process, really. That's what I'm figuring out with this. And I did that, I selected these pens based on somebody that I'd watched on a YouTube video, just making sure that, but, without knowing for sure, there's no other way to find out but to try it. So she looks awesome in person. Oh, thanks, Angel. What's up, Manny? Manny's in the room. McDio. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Yes, sir. Happy freaking Wednesday. Hope everybody had a good work day. Mine was interesting. I'm dealing with a coworker who actually in a management position who's kind of being a little mouthy, and I don't like it. Tyler knows what I'm talking about. But other than that, yeah, we're doing all right. So I'm going to let this dry again a little bit more. I might pull this Might take this outer piece back off. Now that I've got the paint done, actually, I see a little bit that I got to touch up here. Fuck work. Let's talk models. Thanks, George. Here, that's going on screen. That's worthy of a screen-worthy comment. There we go. Whoops. You, what's up? Wrong one. So I clicked on it, and then it freaking goes to that one. There we go. Fuck work. Let's talk models. Yes, sir. Let's talk models. That's right. So, looks pretty good. And there's a strip that goes across this, and that is one of, let's see, it's one of these guys. The one thing they did about this model is Hasegawa was pretty good about these two little holes that are spaced out here. There are several pieces that have these little cross pieces, but the holes are at different widths, so you can't really screw up your parts too much. So this was basically going to go in like that. And now you see why I waited. So now I could, because I wanted to put this color on first before I go in and install that black piece. Once I'm satisfied with it, I can go in and attach that. Glue that in place and then stick it on there. All right. I think I got, this is mostly dry here. I think it's dry enough. I'll find out real quick. I'm going to switch over to the black 1mm tip. This is the outliner. Very thin lines. You can see here pretty good. But it's good for doing the outlines, particularly like this stuff, because I did use pen line fluid on this, but once I went over with the gray, then it kind of just wiped it all out. So in order to redraw those lines so it looks more like that anime scheme, I'm going back over it. And if you make a little mistake like I just did, I tried to pull the pen up, but it's hard to sometimes get the tip to come up without leaving a little bit of ink there or paint. So I can go back over with the gray, not a problem at all, and just take that off. So that's really all I can use this fine tip for, is that part. The rest of these edges that I'm going to go around, I'm going to use one of the 3mm tip, just because I can use the side of it. That's more of a focused sharp tip, whereas this one's a little bit rounder, so I can go along the sides here. Make sure I got good paint flow here. There we go. Yeah, and you go around the edges like this. And this is all just to give it that look of hand-drawn. And I think it works out well. Take your time, nice and slow. Just like that. Oops. See, now I'm going to go on this side here. Go around the other side of the foot. Down on the bottom. Just take a little bit of a steady hand. Okay. So there we go. So now I've got all those highlighted edges. I'm going to do the same for the heel section here. It's okay, that was on the gray. I'm going to touch that up with some gray. I got a little goof there, but I can go back over it and clean it up. Not a problem. Now, if you do that on the other color, on the other side that's the airbrush side, that's a little different story, because you might have to repaint that. All right, we'll take that off screen now. So I've been watching George for quite some time, and he's working on a 1/72 scale German paper tank right now. From a manufacturer, I think it was, didn't you say it was out of, not Russia, but whatever country's getting, those two countries are, but anyway, the bottom line is the model is a tough. Oops, I got one more little touch up to do. The molding is so horribly bad. It's just amazing to watch the kind of work he's doing to make it right. So if you do get a chance to watch, even if you can't watch it live because he's on the East Coast and takes a little bit to get up at 3 a.m. if you're going to watch 6 a.m. live stream. But Ukraine, that's right. Yeah, out of the Ukraine. That's where that model kit came from. And I've, some of the stuff that comes out there is kind of good, but man, the one he's got is definitely not easy to build. So if you want to, go check out Old School Gunpla on Instagram, and you can see some of the stuff he's doing. It's just unreal. I think I'm pretty satisfied with this foot. So now I've got, sorry, I keep going off camera. I'm trying to keep everything centered. I did some adjustments tonight. So this is the other foot. I'm liking the way this looks. It's very good, very close representation to the other side. This is the way they're going to be on the model right here. So left foot, right foot. This leg, I have not started this leg at all. So this is all just blank red, black. Oh, you're welcome, George. Anytime. This is done in steel. I did a little bit of, I think I did, I did some outlining with that 1 mil black pen on those little grooves. And then I did my shadowing on the upper leg here. But I have not installed these little, I don't know, the little detail parts that go in here, because I want to make sure once I get all my shadowing done, then I can go back and install those, which is what I did. If you look at the other leg, let me pop this back in. So yeah, on here you can see those are in place. Those little circles. The same thing on the arm, but I haven't done those. I haven't put those yet. This is the one arm that I have completed with the shadowing on it. I could go in and install those pieces here as well, because I'm pretty much done with this as well. And I did use white on these the barrels here to make sure that those kind of look like a little bit more light reflection on those shiny bits. Let's see. where should we go from here? Let's see. Should I finish this up? I think that's why I'm going to leave that. Just a little bit of shadow on the back there. I'm going to pop this back off. And keep those two together so I make sure they go on the same leg. This is really showing some wear and tear. And the more and more I handle this, it's one of the things I notice. And this is, again, a learning process for me, too. This is the first time I ever used these. So when I do this again, and I say when because I probably will eventually do this again, I'm going to make sure that, when I get an idea and I'm going to fill in all these areas and then go ahead and just clear coat them right away once I'm satisfied. Because a lot of the, what we call it, hanger rash, it's just, from handling it, moving it around, putting pieces on, taking them back off. It's taking its toll. And there's a lot of touching up that I have to do before I go ahead and clear coat everything. So let's see. This is the other arm here. Let's get an idea. So the arms are basically going to be like, this is almost a spread eagle position. So that's why I kind of did this in this fashion with this arm. Well, a lot of the lights on the top because the arms are basically spread out. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. There's not going to be a ton of shadowing, just mostly in the lower portion of the forearm. So let's see, how far up did I go? I kind of went, this is where the hand goes. I kind of went around maybe half to 3/4 of the way up and then around this edge. So that's what I'm going to do. Start that. Now, for some reason, I couldn't find the blue, the dark blue, the navy blue that I've been using for most of the shadowing on the red. I couldn't find it in a 1mm. I don't know if it's just not available or what. So I'm happy to use the 3 and the 5, which is fine. It's just I can't get into it. If I want to do some really fine details, I got to be careful and take my time because it doesn't always, this pen is still has a rounded tip to it more than a sharper tip for that finer detail stuff. So from here, let's see if that one's going to be left arm. This one's going to be right arm. We'll start on this side. And we're just going to work our way. Start here. And go right about there. And it's kind of like you just got to go for it, Because if you don't, that's kind of where I'm at. So if I come across here, I can fill all this in. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Be careful not to touch my paint. I do have some markings that are going to go on here. There's a lot of black lines that are going to fill in. You can see those detail areas. Those are going to be filled in with black. So I'm not too concerned about filling in those areas with this blue if they do happen to cross those lines, because that's going to be done with a black decal. All right. So now that I've got those two lines down basically where I'm going to go, I'm going to switch over to the 5. It's crazy you're working on a Macross kit, my friend. And I just, let me put this up on screen. My friend idea started watching it. Well, that's awesome. Oh, you started watching Macross. Well, that's cool. you're not going to be disappointed, especially if you watch the movie. I think the movie is awesome. So now I've got my lines that I'm going to go ahead and just flood these with the 5 mil and fill all this in. Remember earlier I was talking about, I'd fill in a section of blue and then I'd go back and, I got to add a little bit more here and I'd fill in that section. Well, by doing so, I noticed that I'm getting these little transition lines. You can kind of see where it dried and I filled in a spot and then I filled in another spot. I don't want to see those transitions. So I'm trying to make sure that when I go ahead and fill these in, when I'm ready to go, I just got to go and do it. I don't want to go back and try to fill in a new section. It just, I don't want to see that. Those transition lines. And there's a little bit, I do have a few little gaps here on that where that decal is going to go. I'm not too sure. I filled them in anyway, but if I do miss a spot there, it's not going to be too terribly bad because, again, there's going to be a black decal. And a lot of the markings I'm not going to be putting on this kit. I'm kind of like, well, it's a bummer because I really like the markings, but when I do all these shadows, if I put markings on, particularly the white decals, they're going to show up, against those shadowed areas, and it probably wouldn't look right at all. So I think I'm just better off doing just the black markings, most of the striping, and in keeping with the anime paint scheme, I think it'll look a lot closer to the anime if I don't. I mean, there's like Miria's initials, her initial logo goes on, her ranking logo goes on, number of kills, all that stuff. And I think if I went ahead and put all that stuff on, it would kind of detract from what I'm trying to achieve here. So now that I've got the blue on this piece here, just the initial lines, I'm still going to add probably a second little glare line like I've been doing. I'll add a second stripe close to this one, which will add a little bit of detail to that. Make it look more like those markers work without primer. Well, they're going against, they're not going on straight plastic. G1, I'm talking to G1 now. His question is, those markers work without primer. I'm putting them over, all these pieces have been painted and then flat coated to give them a little bit of grip. So essentially it's kind of like it's a surface prep a little bit because they don't go on very well as far as gloss. I have put them on a gloss coat, and it just as an experiment when I was this was my practice kit when I was trying out these pens to develop this kind of paint scheme. And now this was flat coated, but there were some pieces that were maybe a little bit shinier, and I noticed the paint does not stick as well. It kind of flows around a little bit like you'd think a gloss coat would with another type of paint. So the video that I watched on the guy demoing these pens, he said that he flat coated everything to give it some kind of grip. So I was just going along those rules of basically the flat coat, of course, has a slight little bit of texture, and then it also allows that paint to kind of grip a little bit. So just know the difference and don't call it Robotech. Yeah, I know, right, Angel? I know, but that was the 80s. That's what we grew up with. We got to give it credit. However, we know better now. We're adults now. I remain blown away. You're doing this all freehand. I know it scares the shit out of me too, George. But hey, You know what? All right, this is almost dry. It's actually dry. I can see it. I am going to go back and run my black pen down this because there is a piece of plastic that kind of separates the forearm here, and it is black already. So I will go back and hit that with some one of these black pens here in a second. For the time being, I'm going to get ready to do my second. That second little line that kind of gives it that glare look, and we'll start from the elbow section and work our way forward. I think I did that on, I did that on both sides. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to start kind of in this area right where this joins the elbow, and then kind of move a little bit further away as we get closer to the hand here. So you'll see this line. It'll probably merge most of the way here and then separate right about here or so and can come forward. All right, we got a big one here. Oh, there's a clear coat on that. Yes, there is a clear flat. That's what I did. I painted all these parts in Mr. Color lacquers, and then I went back over it with Gaia Notes flat to seal everything, but also give these paint pens a little bit of grip. Once I get the colors down on, the shadowing and stuff, these paint pens down, I'm going to go back and clear gloss everything again, so I can go and put my markings on. And I'm going to let this dry just for a little while longer before I do that second line. I want to show you what I'm talking about as far as the markings. Let me put this here. I've got the decals close by, so it won't take much. All right, so here's the decal sheet for the Queadluun Rau. And when I say markings, I'm talking about all these black ones. This is pretty much everything that's going to go on the kit. Unfortunately, all these white markings and a lot of the gold ones here, these are the eyes for the Myriad character. Those will probably get used if I do the pilot figure, but this is not going to be an open cockpit anyway, so chances are those won't even be seen. But all the black markings like these here, these go on the arms. These are on the legs. These are on the legs. This is on the head. These are also, these little curvy ones are also on the arms. So all those will be used. Some of the stuff will have to be painted, but I'm going to gloss coat everything so I can properly put the decals on, and then go back and flat everything again. Actually, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to wait and see what the gloss coat looks like. It may look, this whole anime scheme may look great with a gloss coat, and I'll just leave it that way. But I have to use that gloss coat to try to level out all these layers that are going on, because obviously with these ink pens or the paint pens, there's going to be a variance level between the two transitions. So by glossing everything over, I can get those lines to kind of blend away a little bit better, and maybe look more natural, I think. All right, so where was I here? Okay, we're going to start here and work our way forward. So make sure I got some good flow here. There we go. Yeah, so I'm just kind of cleaning up this line too. There's a little spot back here. Once I get closer to the front, there we go. Now let me come out and go forward over here. These lines don't have to be perfectly straight either. Again, this is all looking, or trying to recreate this hand-drawn anime look, which it was drawn by hand, so certainly there was imperfections. The lines weren't straight. just like that. There we go. I'm going to do the same on this side. Just want to make sure I don't touch my paint. Let that make sure that dries without getting any fingerprints on it. Nice to say leave it gloss. Yeah, again, I will find out what it looks like when I do it. But yeah, I'm right there with you. It might look great that way. So, but we're going to find out. Either way, I have to gloss coat it. So that's the great part is that either way, I got to do it, whether I decide to leave it that way or not. I mean, I'm going to gloss coat it, then I'm going to put my markings on, and then I'll have to gloss it again. There's going to be quite a few layers on this. I got to gloss it again just to seal those decals and protect them and everything like that. And then we'll decide whether or not to go into additional step after that. So there we go. I got that line on both sides. That kind of add that little bit of character. My markings will go on, and that will kind of complete the whole thing. It looks a little bit of plain up here on the top, but that's all going to be filled in with black decals. So once I get those additional characteristics on there, I think it'll look really nice. All right, pretty good with that. I'm going to set that aside to dry. I guess what I could do next is this little hand here. And one of the things I just did on my own here, I was trying to figure out how I could paint these without, having a little polycap here. I was like, well, I took a piece of the polycap sprue and I melted it basically until it formed a ball, and I just made a little ball joint there and popped it on, and I can do all my paint work and don't have to worry about it. So for this, we're going to be using gray, even a little bit of white. And this is the lighter gray, and we're using that as instead of shadows for what I've been doing with the other pieces with the darker colors. I'm using the gray as my lighter areas. So this is what would be the thumb. These are the two fingers here. So with the hand in this position, my light is going to be on the top here and the bottom of the thumb. So that's basically what I'm going to do. I might actually take this other. Let's see if this one's any better. I got two of these little. Yeah, shoot, I can't get it. It's running away from me on the bench here. Hang on. Okay. I have two of these little ball joints I made. This one fits a bit tighter, so I'm going to use it instead. All right. So we got that there. Julius, what is up, my friend? How are you? Good to have you in as always. I am enjoying a nice glass of wine with my model building. I think that's why I can do this freehand, George. Maybe that's what my secret is. The only reason I'm doing this freehand is because I got a glass of wine here. Who knows? So for the hand here, I'm just doing little ovals across because they're all rounded. So just kind of smooth and round. So I'm just adding a little bit of highlight to the top of each finger. It would represent those areas that are not in shadow as much as the rest. So And that's one thing that I've discovered too. When I was talking about this last week, when I practiced on that old MG Hainu, that the Hainu has mostly a lot of flat surfaces. There's really no curvy lines. This kit is nothing but smooth surfaces and curved lines. There's hardly any flat, faceted type surfaces. It's all this very smooth. And maybe that's the way they designed, when Yoshi Kamamori designed these the mecha, that he took the female armor that is the Queadluun Rau and made it very, it looks very female, very elegant looking, with those, though there's no hard lines, that, of course, I guess even the male armor in the movie wasn't exactly a lot of faceted, straight, smooth. They were also very smooth design. So maybe that makes no sense at all. But vino with vino, yes, of course. Wouldn't have it any other way, George. The go-go juice. Yes, it is my go-go juice. Well, I have to support my investment. So I'm just adding a little bit of, because this hand is kind of like a bulbous little wrist section here, but it's got some higher points. So I'm just adding a little bit of that lighter color to those areas around these fingers. Yeah, I'll do the same on the sides here, because these when these hands are in place, they're kind of recessed back into the wrist a little bit, but a little bit of this will be showing. So that's why I'm doing this in this fashion on these. I'm just kind of filling this. And while this paint is wet, which is it's kind of nice in that respect, that while it's still flowing, you can go back over it. The tricky part is when you let it dry. You have to, if you're going to let it dry and do a second coat, make sure it's dry first. Don't try to go back over these while they're still, setting. I've noticed that if you try to draw, try to put some more paint onto these, it'll sometimes pull the other paint right off, just because it hasn't fully set. It's just better. All right, so here's something I have to pay attention to. These are the little wrist barrel, the little wrist cannons. These will go on a certain way, so I want to make sure my light, kind of like what I did with this one. Pull this one back out. So you see how I've got my light area there on the top. I need to make sure that I do the same with this, depending on how it sits in the kit. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be installed this direction. Oh, shit, I'm getting off camera. Be installed in this direction here. So this will be my top barrel with the other two underneath. You notice that there's only, it's kind of a directional piece. So looking at this is my top one. So that's where I can go from there. So what I'll do is I can add the gray now to the tops of each of these, and then my white, that's the white as far as the highlight for the light reflection there. Now these are barrels, so I would imagine they would be a little bit shinier than other stuff. So can you shade with pens? How do you mean, G1? How do you mean shade with the pens? Because that's what I'm kind of doing. I mean, with the gray, because of the purple color, that this is a custom color that I mixed when I made the kit. It's kind of a purplish gray for the hands and the feet and stuff like that. I couldn't find a pen that was a darker version of that, so I ended up using the gray as more of a highlight color to highlight the lighter areas, whereas in the red, like I'm using the blue as a shadow color. And before I continue on this, let me just set this down. So here is what I'm talking about. So if I go in and look at my actual screens, so here's the screenshot from the movie. So you see the shadows. There are some black. There's some black gloss lines in there, but most of the shadow is kind of like almost like a purple or a dark blue. And so that's where I came up with the dark blue for the shadowing that I'm using on this. So here's another example. The close-up of the head and the upper torso and the arm. So you see, that's kind of what I did with the shadowing on the arm, and then those black lines, and those are the markings that will go on later. And then here's a little bit another view of the front, so you can see those round areas, these discs that go on the inside and outside of the leg, how those are shadowed basically by the lighting. So, but with the gray, I couldn't really find a color that represented a shadow as good as I had the other stuff. So I decided to use the lighter gray and make it more of a lighter, and using the original paint that I put down as my shadow. Does that make sense? Like, for instance, let me show you the torso again. You guys came in a little later. You didn't get to see this necessarily. So here's the back. Okay. So you see the purplish color in those nozzles there is more of my shadow color, whereas the gray is the lighter color. And then I even used white as a means of giving it an additional layer of gloss. So I guess to answer your question, yes, you can use the pens to shade, but it just depends on your application. Like, are you using it, the pens, like in the gray, and in this case I'm using it as a lighter color, whereas the blue I'm using it as the shadow. So, or even like this down here, I'm using black on top of the steel to create that glossy kind of a reflective look on top of that color. So it just depends on the situation, I guess. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm really happy with it. It took me a while to even put the white on there. Originally, I just put the gray on. I was like, gosh, do I want to do this? Because I know once you go in, sometimes when you start using these pens, it's like there's no going back. I could try to repaint something later, but it's like it took me a while to get the courage up. Do I want to add an additional color? Do I want to go for that extra layer of gloss on there? Actually, I'll show you the front too, so you can see the shoulder armor there. It goes over the shoulders. That's also done, but I also have some black on there too as well for shadows. I haven't decided. I probably will not do any white on top of these. I think I'm going to leave those alone. But as far as the other shadow lines, like the gloss and stuff like that on the shoulders and the back portion here, I think it looks quite nice. And then I'll do the the outer, those discs that go on the outer. I think this is the pennant, or this is the, trying to get my clamp back on here. This is a really heavy piece. I don't think I've got the right one. I've got to get this. You know what? I'm not even going to deal with it. This thing is so heavy. I'm just going to set it down and let it sit. Because I tried to, it's hard for me to get one of these skewers to actually hold it. It's so damn heavy. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to put that on screens. That's a good point. So, a decent amount of prep work and planning, but damn well worth it. Yeah, thank you. Especially with the gray, because again, I was going into this thinking that I was going to use colors to make shadows, right? So when I came across the challenge of like, well, I can't use the gray as a shadow. It has to be more of a highlight. I had to kind of reverse my thinking, because now I got to think about, okay, where is the highlights going to be versus the shadow? Because if I'm applying the blue in this case to the red, I'm using that as a shadow color, so you can kind of get your head wrapped around that. It's a little bit easier. But when I get into the gray, I was like, well, I've got to think about it in the opposite sense, because now I've got to think about where's my color going to go to basically apply light. You know what I mean? So once I figure that out, and sometimes I'll sit there and stare at it for a while. It's really the only way to get through it, is you just got to kind of stare at it, figure it out. Okay, so I added a little bit of gray to the tops of these, and I don't know if you can see that. I can go a little bit closer so you can see so you can see the differential there. When that dries, then I'll add a little strip of white to each one of those, and then we'll kind of light up those little barrels, and then I can install those in the arm to make it look like, just like the other one. So we're gonna let that sit and dry. Where we at? 7:18. We got about 10 minutes or so. We'll wrap this one up. I was going to start that other leg, but that's just a bunch of filling in large areas with blue. So it's not very interesting. So I'm going to move on here. This is one of the arm sections. This is like the upper arm. This attaches to the shoulder, and this is attached. This is the elbow attachment here. I don't have these fully pressed together because there's got to be a little bit of a black line in the middle there. There's a decal, I think, that goes around. I might end up painting it, but that little raised section there, you can kind of see it on this piece here. There's a tiny little raise. That's got to be black, so I've kind of left them apart for now. But let's see, that was the left arm. This is going to be the right arm. So it's going to go in this way. I've got to think about, we're talking about shadows, and I'm going to use the gray as the lighter area. So this top piece, the top of this will be exposed more to light, and there's a little bit of this is under the shoulder armor, so there's going to be some shadow here. So I've got to maybe take my gray and kind of go around this area here, leaving this mostly darker. Take that off screen. There we go. Whoops. Seems like a better option, even with this small deal. Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm totally with you on the decals. Those little skinny ones are kind of a pain in the butt, especially around the curved surface. Same thing with the head here. There's supposed to be a little decal that goes around the edge of these little, what you call, I guess you call them earmuff discs or whatever. There's also a V-shaped decal. I'll be using that one for sure. And then I've got to put some shadowing on here as well with my pink pen, but I'm not sure. I'm going to try to do the decal first. I really don't know if it's going to work well. Like I said, I'll probably end up just painting it. I may even do a reverse wash. I've got some enamel. Because these are lacquers, I can go ahead and just hand brush some black enamel on there and then take a Q-tip with some my enamel thinner and take it off like I would a panel line and just leave the black paint there. So that's another problem for another day. Sounds like a Saturday problem, right? Anyway. All right, so let's get to this. Let's see if I can figure out this other arm here real quick. Making some decent headway on some of these pieces tonight. So, all right, so we agree that this is the top and this is the bottom. So I've got to do a little bit of the elbow section here, or this, where the forearm, this pivot, this will be exposed mostly. The elbow is going to be inserted into the arm quite a bit. Like the majority of this will be, in fact, these pins here from the polycap, those are completely covered up. So there's really only just this center section exposed. So I'm going to go ahead with the 3mm gray. I think I'm going to start right about here. And then this is going to go under. So if I go around like this, this is my shadow under here. This is going to be the bottom of the arm, so it's going to be less exposed. You know what? And if it's not perfect, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter. I mean, there's a certain point where, especially when you're recreating a hand-drawn type scheme like this, you don't have to worry about making too many mistakes. Okay, so I'm looking at my other one because I need to compare it. So that went all the way up to the elbow. That's what I did there. Okay. All right, so because this is the elbow here, I'm going to come off of this joint and go, most of the top of this is going to be exposed. So I'm going to come down like this and do the same here at an angle. I'm going to fill all that in with gray. Actually, this is a small enough piece. I think I can just go ahead and continue using the 3mm that I'm using now. Just gotta get good flow. I mean, there's enough paint coming out, but sometimes you want it to really just cover. So you shake it up, give a little dab on the tip, and then we'll all right, we'll do the same with this here. Doing my best not to get my fingerprints on anything. There we go. All right, and I'm going to add just a little bit of a additional line there. One of those reflective kind of shadow lines. There. All right, I can let that dry. Okay. All right. So let's see. This is. Oh, I know what we can do next. So this is the form we just did. I'm going to take my fine tip black pen. I'm going to go back. I was talking about this black line here. I'm going to go ahead and just. Yeah, this black pen, I tell you. I'm gonna have to do some touch up on the blue now. It's weird. It's almost like the tip of it is. It kind of like. It almost like scratches the surface as it's applying paint, and when doing so, it almost kind of like flicks a little dots out every now and then. So I get these little black. Can you see that right in the middle? There's like little black dots, like it just kind of flicked a little bit out there. Easily fixed, but it's kind of like, damn, man, what are you doing? As soon as it dries, I just go back over it with blue like that. We're done. All right, so what I'm going to do next, last thing we're going to do tonight, I've got these barrels here with the gray on them. I'm going to take my white, and now I'm going to do that gloss. So we've got a little bit of gray on this already. So I'm just going to run pretty much straight down the middle on this top one. There we go. And then the other two as well. So now we'll go. All right. There you go. All right, I'm gonna let that dry, and then I can actually pop this in. You're supposed to install this before you assemble the arm, but I figured out how to kind of work it in there because it fits barely down. It's supposed to pop into this section right here, but it barely fits in here, so you got to kind of rock it in there. But I figured it out how to do it. That's why I'm able to assemble it this way. Normally, I would have to kind of work around those edges, but do you plan on keeping this clean paint job, or are you doing any somewhat? No, I'm not going to be doing weathering because I am trying to recreate a scene from the movie. And here I will show it to you. So initially, this was my plan, and this is what I'm trying to stick to. So here's a scene from the movie. If you've ever watched the movie, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. So the Queadluun Rau kit is in the back. You can see her way over here. She's kind of pinned to the ceiling. In this scene, Max flies in, basically in pursuit of her, flies into the ship, lands, transforms into batteroid mode here in front, and she's kind of waiting, trying to ambush him. So the answer to your question is no, I will not be doing weathered because I'm doing this. I'm going to be recreating this kind of paint scheme. So I think weathering would probably detract from that, even if I wasn't trying to recreate this kind of a scene. So that would be another reason not to. If I was doing just regular paint without doing trying to match the box art mostly, then yeah, I would probably weather it and really make it look more realistic. But this is my first attempt at an anime paint scheme, so I'm kind of sticking to that, and I want to make it look more of that cartoonish, that cell shaded look, and I think weathering would kind of detract from that, so I will not be weathering it. And with that, my friends, we're going to wrap this one up tonight. Let me go back to, let's go back to this real quick so you can kind of see the carnage. These are all my pens I'm using. I've got torso here and feet, some of my other spare parts over here, and stuff like that. And go back up here. So do the outro here pretty soon. Yes, here's my face. That's right, my friends. And thank you all for showing up tonight. Great questions, great commentary from all you guys, and inquiries and stuff like that. I hope I answered all of your questions for you. Let's see. G1 is saying, yeah, that makes sense. Turning out real nice. This is the best painting I've ever. This is best at painting, but wait. I'm not the best at painting, but even I can do it. It looks really nice. Oh, I appreciate that very much. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you joining in. I hope you guys, spread the word. Let your friends know what I'm doing here. Smash that like button, hit the little bell, whatever you guys got to do on YouTube. I broadcast to both, all three locations, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. I tried doing Instagram, and I haven't done that yet. I can broadcast to them as well, but I haven't. I got to figure out. There's some processes there to make that work with a live stream and on StreamYard, which is one of the service I'm using. So anyway, thank you, George, on this sweet show, Mike. Thank you so much. I'll be watching you tomorrow morning. I expect a full recap. Just kidding. I couldn't say that with a straight face. I tried. I really tried. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for all the good questions. But again, check out my Amazon shop. You can see some of the products that I use every day during scale modeling. I think the description was the links in the description. I think I added that like I normally do. Anyway, if you don't get a chance to check that out, no big deals. But yeah, tell your friends. Let's keep this thing rocking and rolling, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again for everybody coming in tonight and joining in and helping this, helping me do this and this hobby and have a great time doing it. So anyway, be good humans, you guys. We'll talk to you soon. See you next week. And here we go with the outro.